Hi, everyone. It's great to be here with you today. Today's topic covers the virtue of magnanimity and its relationship to leadership. So when I was in graduate school, I wrote my dissertation on the topic of humility. When I showed up at the Naval Academy to teach leadership and ethics, I was asked, should a leader be proud or humble? My answer was, that's a good question. I'm not really sure. My initial thought was, well, it seems like effective leaders have a tendency to be proud. And it also seems like humble people may not seek out leadership positions, and even if they do, they may end up getting walked on when they get into those positions. I wasn't satisfied with either of those answers, so I went back to the books to see if I could develop better ones. My study revealed that there's quite a difference of opinion on the topic since the writing of Aristotle some 2,500 years ago. And this difference is personified in two historical leaders, Alexander the Great and Mahatma Gandhi. Turning first to Alexander, he is the quintessential proud leader. Here's how one historian describes him. Alexander felt in himself such a dignity and right of empire that he could not believe it possible that anyone would refuse to obey him. Whether in Europe or in Asia, among Greeks or Persians, all was indifferent to him. Wherever he found men, he fancied he should find subjects. Two further data points on the pride of Alexander. During his conquests, he named 76 cities after himself, but he did name one city after his favorite horse, Bucephalus. So if we turn to Gandhi, we could not see a more different approach to leadership. Gandhi lived in poverty by choice, made his own clothes, was willing to go to jail, and even starved himself to accomplish his leadership mission. Gandhi felt that in order to lead the people of India, he must be like them and live like them. He took a lowly and humble path. Now, both leaders were amazingly influential, but used decidedly different methods to accomplish their leadership mission. So how do pride and humility fit into the calculus of leadership? I'd like to answer the question actually in two parts. In this discussion, I'll deal with the habit of pride, or what some would call the virtue of magnanimity, and in the next we'll discuss humility. So in his Ethics, Aristotle discusses the virtue that crowns all the other virtues, using the Greek term megalopsychia. Megalopsychia is often, and I would say inaccurately, translated into English as pride. We'll get to the translation issue in a minute. But sticking with the word pride for now, Aristotle described the habit this way. The proud person is good in every way. The proud person is truly virtuous, and he knows it. He has all the virtues, and pride crowns them and makes them better. The proud person is concerned with honor, does only great deeds, is dignified among the great and unassuming among the lowly, gives but doesn't receive, wishes to be superior to others, looks down on others, is open in hate and love, and is self-sufficient. So some of this description sounds good, but other elements are not that attractive. For example, the proud person wants to give rather than receive. That sounds like generosity, but Aristotle makes it clear he's not talking about being generous. The proud person only gives to maintain his superiority over other people. The proud person wishes to be superior to others, looks down on others, and is open in those estimations. It is the portrait of a person who thinks he's better than you and is happy to tell you about it. Philosopher David Hume likes Aristotle's thinking, but recognize that proud people can be obnoxious as they come across as arrogant and conceited. Hume's solution? Be modest on the outside and proud on the inside. Hume asserts that this is especially important for leaders. Leaders cannot afford to be authentically humble because what enables leaders to be great leaders, in Hume's view, is their gargantuan self-esteem. The great leaders stride across the pages of history, and it is their ego that drives them to take those great strides. So be proud on the inside and modest on the outside. So is Hume onto something? If we add Hume to Aristotle and smooth out some of the obnoxious aspects of arrogance, do we get a great leader? Well, let me ask you one further question. Have you ever met a leader that pretends he cares about you, but in reality only cares about himself? If you haven't, you will. And this is precisely the type of leader Hume is describing. So let's take a look at the translation issue I mentioned, and then we can examine a better way to approach Aristotle's thinking that we can see in the writing of St. Thomas Aquinas. The Greek term for this virtue is megalopsychia, which translated literally is great soul. In Latin, the word is magnanimitas. Magna is the Latin word for great, and nimitas is a form of the Latin word anima, which means soul. Thus the use of the English term magnanimity. To translate megalopsychia in English as pride doesn't work for two reasons. First, pride in English is ambiguous. In the context of the Christian tradition, it's the worst vice, which we'll get to when we talk about the virtue of humility. Pride can also indicate a healthy sentiment, like the pride parents feel for their children when they do something good. The other problem is the Greek and Latin terms for the vice of pride are different words. In Greek, hubris concerns the person that thinks so highly of himself that he doesn't know his own place in the universe. In Latin, the word for pride is superbia, which points to a disordered self-love that is so strong it displaces all other loves, up to and including love for God. So to keep things clear, we should stick to magnanimity or just say greatness of soul. And to give a final definition of magnanimity, we can say, it is the ability of a morally excellent person to know his strengths and take on challenging tasks on the basis of that knowledge. St. Thomas Aquinas helps us make sense of magnanimity by saying that it fits under the cardinal virtue, courage, because self-knowledge provided by magnanimity enables a person to do the daunting things that he ought to do on the basis of the talents God has given to him. So how is magnanimity related to leadership? First, it is a form of courage that is necessary to have if a person is going to take on the often great and intimidating tasks of a leader. A person will not do the great tasks God has given him the talent to do if he is not aware that he has the talent in the first place. Second, people will be unlikely to follow a person that does not have a reservoir of self-confidence based on the gifts he truly has. Perhaps the greatest example of this is the leadership example of Christ that we see in the Gospels. Despite his humility, we can see that Jesus had a very high view of himself. And here are just a few verses that demonstrate his exalted self-view. Jesus says his teaching is greater than the law of Moses. He says that wisdom consists in listening to his words. He says that he is greater than King Solomon and the prophet Jonah. He says Isaiah's prophecy of the Messiah is fulfilled in him. He says he is Lord of the Sabbath. He says heaven and earth will pass away, but his words will not. He says he is the only way to the Father. He refers to himself with the same phrase, I am, as Yahweh does when speaking to Moses from the burning bush. Over and over again, Jesus claims to be God. The magnanimity of Jesus is clear in all these and many more verses in the New Testament. His claim to be God is the greatest historical example of magnanimity there is. And Jesus needed magnanimity to accomplish his leadership mission. In order to reconcile all of humanity to the Father, talk about a big mission, Jesus had to recognize that he was the only begotten Son of the Father and act in accordance with that identity. One theologian, Hans Urs von Balthasar, describes the magnanimous mindset of Jesus like this: I am the one who must accomplish this task. I am the one through whom the kingdom of God must and will come. Without recognizing his divine origin, his divine role, and his perfection, Jesus would not have set out to achieve the mission given to him by God the Father. And without communicating this self-view, other people would not have followed him to their death, and we would not be his disciples today. Magnanimity was crucial to the leadership of Jesus. And it is crucial to our leadership as well, because what von Balthasar says about the mindset of Christ must be our mindset if we are to be the leaders God is calling us to be. I am the one through whom the kingdom of God must and will come. And that leadership mission can only be attempted and accomplished through magnanimity. We must lead knowing the gifts God has given to us so that we can respond to Christ's call to lead others to his kingdom.